Support WrestleTalk!
Hello and welcome to another edition of the WrestleTalk Reactive News. I am Tempest, your Jam That Champion, and I am joined by Luke Owen D.A.D., filling in for Randy Andy Datson, of course, because he is unwell. Get better soon, Randy. And Luke, today we have to talk about a topic that we kind of have already talked about in the past, one of our lost episodes of Blackpool Content Club, but is still very apt and very appropriate on this day. Can Triple H save NXT? Of course, we saw last night that the black and gold, or some variation of it, may be replacing the NXT 2.0 Splatoon paint splatters, and that has a lot of people very excited, and now has a lot of people wondering what the future of NXT is. What do you think it is?
I think we are heading back to the Triple H era of NXT. I think like when Triple H took over creative, we saw instantly the changes between Raw and SmackDown, but a lot of fans were like, well, is he going to do stuff with NXT? Because that was his baby. That was his pet project. That was kind of the training ground. It was the breaking ground, if you will, for Triple H to see if one day he could take over the creative process on the main roster. That was kind of the plan. And it sort of didn't work because it was always a brand that lost money. And then it lost the Wednesday Night War to AEW, and Vince McMahon had to step in and be like, well, goddamn, pal, you don't know what you're doing. What we need here is color, younger stars. We need homegrown talent that can main event WrestleMania and all of this sort of stuff.
People saying
yeah, Bron Breakker, Mandy Rose, all of this sort of stuff. Like, that's what we need for NXT 2.0. And it's kind of remarkable that it's been one full calendar year of 2.0. And at the end of that one calendar year, the 2.0 experiment has died. And Triple H is now in charge, and he's like, well, never mind that I'm going back to my version of NXT. The video literally ends with, we're ever evolving. And by evolving, we're taking a step back and we're going back to what we liked about NXT, black and gold.
Black and gold. I saw a great tweet that was Doc Brown explaining this timeline. It's like, somewhere along this timeline, we skewed into this alternate version of NXT. I think you are bang on the money, and I think that there is a lot of optimism now about NXT because I agree, the main roster being Triple H's baby now, there's no real difference. He couldn't use just good storytelling and the things that made people enjoy NXT in the first place, great wrestlers having good matches, incompetently booked storylines. That's what he's been doing on the main roster, so there's a little bit of a change in, well, what then makes NXT special? But now I think that they could really do something where if they were to bring back NXT takeovers, for example, and still have those be your super indie mega shows every 3 months or so, that would really appease a certain portion of the WWE audience that maybe isn't going to be serviced as much with main roster booking, the main roster presentation, just because it's different. Even if it's a money loser, I think that there is a lot that they could do with just having that exist to keep that portion of their audience happy.
And there's a bunch of released names from that NXT Black and Gold era that didn't sign with AEW or didn't sign with Impact or go elsewhere, to New Japan or what have you. Guys like Biff Busick.
I was about to say, love Oney Lorcan.
Oney Lorcan, I was just sitting there racking my brain like, what was his NXT name? But yeah, Oney Lorcan, Biff Busick, he retweeted being like, essentially saying like, cool, if we're going back to black and gold, I might want to be on board for that. And Triple H has got a pool of people. Not only has he got some established names within the 2.0 sphere, Toxic Attraction, Carmelo Hayes, Bron Breakker, the Creed brothers, and like a handful of other people, he's got a pool of indie talent that he can bring back in and almost do like a best of version. And that logo feels like a best of version because it's the NXT 2.0 font, but with the black and gold colors. What we're kind of looking at potentially here is an amalgamation of the two ideas. Vince's vision of homegrown stars and Triple H's visions of this best of the super indies that he created with NXT.
Yeah, and NXT 2.0, for all the flack that it's gotten for its nonsensical booking, direction, comedy, what have you, characters, there's still a lot of talent that's come through there. Bron Breakker has been one of the best success stories of WWE's developmental system in general. And pair that with guys like Carmelo Hayes. Granted, I don't know how much longer I want to see these guys in developmental, but there's still so much talent that if you then mix those guys in with a lot of the original Black and Gold NXT talent that could possibly be brought back, or people from the main roster maybe that get mixed in amongst that, you all of a sudden have a lot of potential for great shows, great matches, great storylines. And if I really do think you just get rid of the entire NXT 2.0 thing, because I do think a lot of people kind of looked at that as tainting the NXT brand. If you can rehab the NXT brand back to being close to what it was, all of a sudden now, maybe you do start to take away a little bit of the audience from other promotions just by giving them what they want under the WWE umbrella.
Maybe there's people who are a bit disgruntled with the AEW booking, because there are people who've not been that thrilled with AEW's presentation throughout 2022. I think most people would say that All Out through Revolution was like the peak of like AEW's creative, like, and there was like a creative boom for them. And actually 2021 was a great year for them.
Yeah.
But since then, like week on week, people are like, I'm just not really feeling this product anymore. If there's an alternative there for you, which, you know, AEW started out as, like, if there's a new alternative out there for you, you can move some people across and get them there.
WWE needs to come out and say, we are the alternative to AEW. We're what you want, fans. WWE.
I think it's also worth noting as well, you mentioned there that, like, I don't want to see some of these people stuck in developmental. Someone like a Carmelo Hayes, who I think is, like, main roster bound, you know, or like Solo Sikoa, who, I, you know, we'll come on to in just a second. But I wonder if Triple H is going full steam ahead with what he has always said about NXT, apart from that one interview with Ariel Helwani where he didn't want AEW to look and they only be our developmental system. And it's just your third brand.
Yeah.
There is Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. When you do the draft, all three brands are involved. So it's no longer a developmental system. It's now just another show that we have. And we have champions that go between them. We have main roster stars, they get drafted to NXT. NXT stars get drafted to Raw and SmackDown. And Raw and SmackDown are no longer the main roster. They're just the other two brands. Because Solo Sikoa is on SmackDown. Like, he debuted at Clash of the Castle. He is part of the Bloodline. But if you go onto WWE.com, he's still listed as an NXT wrestler. He's an NXT guy. Toxic Attraction are still listed internally as NXT stars, even though they've been on SmackDown, you know, recently. And now Solo Sikoa has won a belt in NXT, but I'm fully expecting to still see him on SmackDown as part of the Bloodline.
100%. And we Sat and I sat here on Saturday thinking
It's a
about...
lot of sats.
Love Sat. All thinking, what can we do with Solo Sikoa? What can we, and the general feeling was it would be really great to see him as like a separate single star within the Bloodline and have that focus be put on him. And aside from Roman, like, you can obviously focus on Roman as the top guy, but also involve Solo Sikoa as a mid-card champion. And we were wondering, well, it's not really the time to beat Walter for the Intercontinental title, and that's the only title that's on SmackDown. Maybe if you moved him to Raw or moved Bobby Lashley to SmackDown, you can have him take the US title off of him. This is a perfect happy medium where now Solo Sikoa is the NXT North American champion. And I really do like that idea of having it just be a third brand, because even if it is a third brand, it feels different. It is a show with a completely different vibe. It can have a completely different in-ring style than either of the other two shows. And even if it then does feel like, yes, it is all the main roster, it will then still feel different and distinct and unique. And that makes more sense to me as having a third smaller show than just having it be main roster light.
Yeah, it's actually kind of what the original idea for ECW was back in the sort of like mid-aughts. They brought back ECW to be this different alternative product, but in the end, Vince got bored of it quite quickly. It was just like, and then it just became the developmental show. It's where we developed Kofi Kingston and Zack Ryder and all these kind of guys. But we're now looking at a potential idea where Solo Sikoa is going to be on SmackDown this Friday with the North American Championship, an NXT belt on the main roster, which maybe that's not going to be a term we use anymore, and he might defend that belt. I think it was a genius move, not only to remove that the sort of the lines between main roster and developmental, but also get a belt on TV and give the Bloodline more gold, which is kind of what we wanted from them when Solo Sikoa debuted in the group.
Exactly. I think blurring the lines between what is the main roster and what is NXT just makes all the sense in the world for that reason, because for so long, everybody was so upset that you had developmental NXT and then the main roster, and there was a sizable shift from any time anybody would go from one to the other. Everything that they would do in NXT most of the time would be completely forgotten, disregarded. Most of the time they'd show up with a different name, different presentation, and people didn't like that. So if you can have some crossover to be like, hey, you should watch NXT where I'm going to be defending this belt that I'm wearing here on SmackDown, all of a sudden now you have that crossover. Everything feels like a continuity exists. And for so long that just didn't exist in WWE whatsoever. And I think that will be one of the things people point to as one of the great influences Triple H has.
And it's the easiest thing in the world. Like, I think since NXT became like a really popular brand, sort of in that 2015, 2016 era of NXT, like as wrestling fans, we're like, why don't we just feature some of them on Raw and SmackDown? You don't have to call them up to the main roster,
right?
But just have a match on the main roster, have a video package on the main roster, and tell your wider WWE audience that this product down here exists. And I think we've been getting that with Triple H. Toxic Attraction. It was meant to be Nikita Lyons and Zoe Stark. We're now seeing it with Solo Sikoa. On Raw, they told you, hey guys, tomorrow night you're going to want to watch NXT because the Creed brothers and Pretty Deadly are going to have a steel cage match voted for by you fans. That was the commentary team. It wasn't a USA Network video package being like, tune in tomorrow to USA because we want you to keep watching our channel. This is WWE themselves telling you, go and watch this show. And maybe it'll help the viewership for the show, A, be the median age of an NXT viewer, which at one point was 62.
Oh my God.
And like, what makes me, the funny thing about that 62 years old is the whole point of NXT 2.0 was to appeal to a younger audience. That's why it is like the big colorful thing with the sexy young hot girls on it, because, oh yeah, we'll get the younger male demographic. And no, you just got horny old men watching Toxic Attraction.
Exactly what you want out of your developmental show.
Exactly, just beating themselves off with their Cheeto fingers. Like, that's all you had watching NXT.
That is my new least favorite phrase we have had on Reactive News thus far. But overall, where do you think you see NXT in, say, 6 months?
As a brand, I think the Survivor Series, we could see NXT being part of that again, particularly now with Trips in charge. I think when the draft comes around, it'll just be a third option for drafting, and it will be the third brand in WWE. It'll no longer be a main roster developmental. It'll just be, here are our 3 shows with so much continuity between all 3 of them.
You'd love to see it. That will do it for another edition of the WrestleTalk Reactive News. Make sure you let us know what you think we'll see from the future of NXT in the comments below. Make sure to like this video, hit subscribe, and enable notifications so you never miss a WrestleTalk News video just like this one. I have been your host, Tempest, your Jam That Champion. That has been Luke Owen, DAD, and that was wrestling.